Coach Harper Brower ran his hand over the lid of a small, nondescript white box that he discovered in his mailbox at the Pleasant Valley High School's teacher's lounge. It was the first morning of the new school year, and the scent of freshly buffed floors mingled with the faint odor of stale coffee in the corridors. He had no idea who'd left the package for him, or why. The first bell had not yet rung, and he stood alone, the distant hum of a janitor's vacuum cleaner echoing down the hallway. Inside the box lay a stopwatch, the kind that looked as if it had slipped through a crack in time, emerging from a bygone era. It wasn't one of those sleek digital timers coaches use nowadays. Instead, it had a silver casing and real gears that ticked methodically beneath its face. Its minute and second hands were painted as boldly as the old track markings that used to line Pleasant Valley's original cinder course 2 decades ago. He remembered that old track well. 20 years before, he had run on it as one of the school's star milers, helping the Hyenas clinch a long-ago state championship. But since then, the team had fallen into dismal decline, finishing dead last in the conference for years on end. Harper had been hired 2 years earlier to resurrect that lost glory, to bring Pleasant Valley back to greatness. So far, his efforts had earned him little more than derisive laughter from rival schools and pitiful shrugs from the local community. Holding the stopwatch closer, Harper noticed a thick, rough string tied to it, forming a makeshift necklace. He smiled wryly, slipping it over his head, imagining the tension and excitement of the coming season. This timer would hang around his neck as he pushed his runners harder than ever. It wouldn't slip from his grasp in the chaos of a close race, nor would it vanish among the piles of training gear. It had a certain old-fashioned dignity to it, like something a legendary coach would have carried back in the day. He wondered who might have given him such a gift, and for what purpose. With no note or signature, it remained a small mystery, one he would puzzle over as the season progressed. Stepping outside, Harper took in the athletic fields behind the gymnasium. The early autumn sun hovered just above the bleachers, painting the track's red surface with a soft, honeyed light. The air carried a slight crispness, as if gently reminding everyone that summer's lazy warmth was gone. He saw his assistant, Hank Stafford, who sometimes introduced himself as Hank Bingham Stafford in homage to the old coaching lineage, approaching with a lopsided grin. Hank was a man who wore his heart on his sleeve and possessed a natural friendliness that Harper had come to rely on. The assistant's stout frame and easy laughter often belied a man deeply frustrated by the team's poor performance in recent years. "Coach Brower," Hank called out, quickening his pace across the grass. His athletic shoes left dark impressions in the dew. "Welcome to Pleasant Valley," he said, offering a handshake and then patting Harper on the shoulder. "I graduated from here, you know," Harper replied, inhaling the crisp air. He had spent countless hours running laps on this very track when he was just a kid with impossible dreams. That was back when Coach Bingham, Nicholas Bingham, the legendary mentor, had molded him into an all-state runner. Under Bingham's guidance, Pleasant Valley had achieved a pinnacle of athletic dominance. Harper remembered the old coach's booming voice and firm guidance, a man who knew how to transform raw teenage energy into championship form. But that greatness had died along with Bingham himself, who'd suffered a fatal heart attack a year after Harper graduated. In the decades since, a dismal parade of inept coaches had stumbled through the job, each leaving the team weaker than before. Now it was Harper's turn. He was back to restore the program, or so he'd promised when he signed his contract. The local press had scoffed, predicting another disappointing year. But Harper wasn't one to give up. He still had the lean, sinewy legs of a distance runner and a mind that refused to yield to despair. "It's your show now," Hank said, squinting at Harper's tall silhouette. There was an undercurrent of hope and trepidation in his voice. He glanced around to ensure no one overheard. "We can't fall any lower, can we?" "Let's not jinx it," Harper said with a wink. "We both know this team has talent, even if it's hidden. It's up to us to bring it out." Hank nodded, and they headed for the track. In the stands, a few curious onlookers, underclassmen who wanted to see what this new season would bring, huddled together, whispering. 6 boys stepped onto the spongy surface of the track, their running outfits a patchwork of old team gear and personal favorites. Among them was Benny Davis, a promising athlete who showed flashes of brilliance that made Harper's old runner's heart quicken. Bingham would have loved this kid. He had that potential to break records if he could just find the right stride, the right confidence. Harper fingered the stopwatch as he called the first group to the line. He imagined the old gears turning inside this contraption, whispering secrets of time and speed. He blew his whistle. The runners shot forward, arms pumping, legs churning, their shoes tapping a rhythm on the track. The assistant coach pointed out Davis in the third lane. "He's got a shot at all conference," Hank said. Harper raised an eyebrow, lips tightening around the whistle. He watched the runners approach the final curve, the tension mounting, their breathing patterns becoming ragged. At the finish line, Benny Davis surged ahead. Harper pressed the stopwatch button, expecting to see a time just over 2 minutes. Instead, everything ceased. The world fell silent. No breeze stirred, no birds chirped. The other runners halted mid-stride, their muscles corded and veins bulging, yet utterly still. Hank stood, frozen, chewing gum that never moved. The entire tableau resembled a photograph rather than reality. Harper's heart hammered. He blinked rapidly, wondering if something was wrong with him. He held the stopwatch up, its needle fixed at 2:02. Time itself seemed trapped inside this moment. He pressed the button again, and suddenly the world roared back to life. The runners stumbled across the line. Davis bent at the waist, gasping, and Hank resumed chewing his gum as if nothing had happened. "What the—" Harper whispered. He barely caught the whistle as it fell from his lips. Throughout that afternoon's practice, Harper experimented in small increments. Each time he pressed the stopwatch at the exact second a runner crossed the finish line, he witnessed the same impossible event: total stasis. The world paused as if someone had hit a cosmic freeze frame. With another press, it resumed, as if no one had noticed the interruption. Logic rebelled, but the evidence was irrefutable. The stopwatch manipulated time itself, or at least their perception of it. The sun began to set, the sky bleeding from gold into scarlet, then fading into plum. Hank, slumped in a chair inside their cramped office, fanned himself with an old results sheet. "Good practice, eh?" he asked. Yet his voice lacked its usual jauntiness. He must have seen Harper's disconcerted expression. The head coach stared at the stopwatch, refusing to look away from the strange device. "Harper, you okay?" Hank asked, his tone gentle but concerned. "Yeah, sure," Harper said too quickly, his fingers turning the stopwatch over and over. "Where'd this thing come from?" He inhaled deeply, the stale indoor air less comforting than the track's evening breeze. Hank leaned forward, peering at the old-fashioned device. "You tell me." "One of those antiques from the old days, I guess." He let out a chuckle that sounded forced. Harper decided to confide in him. "What if I told you it stops time when I press this button?" Harper said, tilting his head as if delivering the punchline of a very bad joke. Hank's laughter died instantly. He studied Harper's eyes, searching for a hint of teasing. Seeing none, he frowned. "I'd say you need a hat to shield that bald head of yours, Coach. The sun's playing tricks on you." "Didn't you feel it?" Harper insisted, more earnestly now. "Feel what?" Hank's doubt was palpable. "Time. Stopping." "You're serious." Hank's voice dropped to a whisper. He looked at Harper as if the man had sprouted wings, yet Harper's intensity wouldn't let him dismiss it. Curiosity mingled with fear. The silence that followed weighed on them, thicker than the silence of frozen time. Finally, Hank agreed to test it himself the next day. If Harper had lost his mind, Hank would know soon enough. And if he hadn't? Next afternoon, under a bright sun that revealed every crack in the old bleachers, they repeated the drill. This time Hank wore the stopwatch. The runners lined up, and the whistle blew. As Benny Davis sprinted into the home stretch, Hank pressed the button to stop the watch. Instantly, the world froze. He could see dust motes suspended midair. The gum he had been chewing slipped from his mouth and hovered as if caught by invisible strings. Benny Davis's body was poised at the finish line, foot hovering above the track. Harper stood rigid, whistle between his lips, unbreathing, unblinking. Everything that should have moved was still. Everything that should have continued in time's orderly march had halted. Hank's heart hammered as though it wanted to burst from his chest. When he pressed the button again, normal motion resumed. Benny finished crossing the line, the other runners followed, and Harper blew the whistle. All of them acted as though no interruption had occurred. Hank looked at Harper, his face drained of color. "It happened, didn't it?" Harper asked softly. Hank could only nod, his mind churning with questions. Where had the stopwatch come from? Who would gift them such a device? And why? Later, in the dim hush of the locker room, the two coaches sat in silence. The old clock on their office wall ticked loudly, an ironic reminder of the normal flow of time. Finally, Harper broke the quiet. "We have some kind of cursed artifact." Hank gritted his teeth. "Stops time. Crazy as it sounds, that's what it does." His voice quavered slightly. "Not right. Not natural." Harper's mind buzzed with both dread and a terrible, exhilarating idea. The team had been a laughingstock for so long. They had the power now to manipulate races. How easy would it be to turn a losing season into an unprecedented victory streak? With time at his fingertips, he could rearrange runners during a freeze, ensure that Pleasant Valley emerged victorious. He imagined the headlines, the astonished cheers, the return to glory. Hank studied Harper's face. He saw something dangerous flickering in the coach's eyes, a temptation too great to ignore. Harper's voice lowered conspiratorially. "We can use it to help our runners win." Hank swallowed hard. He understood what Harper meant. Stopping time mid-race, physically moving Pleasant Valley's runners into the lead. It was cheating, an unimaginable kind. But after years of defeat, years of being scorned and mocked, the idea burned with illicit allure. Hank shuddered, caught between moral revulsion and desperate longing for a taste of victory. The next day at practice, they tested their scheme. As the runners hit the track, Harper and Hank waited until a chosen moment. With a press of the button, time froze. Together, they lifted a lagging runner, Dylan McElroy, and placed him in front of Benny Davis, the rightful leader. When time resumed, Dylan staggered forward across the line, his eyes wide with confusion and delight. Benny, shocked and angry, protested, but Harper dismissed it. "He had a great kick at the end," Harper lied smoothly. Hank's stomach churned. He knew it was wrong, but seeing Dylan's surprise and the envy of the others was strangely thrilling. The hyenas might finally reclaim their old dominance. Harper's eyes gleamed. They would try this trick in a real meet, a big showdown against Cross River High School, the defending state champs. If they could topple the best, they would reinstate Pleasant Valley's name in the annals of glory. No one would know the truth, except the two of them. The day of the big meet arrived. The stadium was larger, college grade, with proper bleachers packed by rowdy fans. Cross River's team wore sleek uniforms and warmed up methodically, their reputation preceded by a dozen trophies gleaming in a display case back at their school. Pleasant Valley's runners looked nervous, shuffling their feet, aware of past humiliations. Harper and Hank stood together, the stopwatch now slung around both their necks by a sturdier cord. The starting pistol cracked, and 12 runners burst from the line. Benny Davis trailed slightly behind Cross River's stars, Stretch Jarvis and Allie Sweeney, both known for their blistering speed. As they rounded the final stretch, Harper and Hank tensed. This was the moment. Harper pressed the button. The world halted, time froze. Silence enveloped the track like a heavy shroud. A gull suspended in mid-flight above the stadium. The cheers caught in the throats of the spectators, unmoving. Harper and Hank rushed onto the track, poised to lift Benny and place him ahead of the Cross River boys. A matter of seconds. Well, no seconds at all. In this timeless pocket, they could arrange victory with ease. But something was wrong. Harper's hand flew to his chest as panic seized him. He no longer felt the stopwatch's reassuring weight around his neck. "Hank!" he hissed, voice strained, as if he dared not disturb the silence of a world trapped between ticks of a clock. "Where's the stopwatch?" Hank's face contorted in fear. He patted his neck, his chest, his pockets. Nothing. With alarm flaring in his eyes, he scanned the track, the grass, the sidelines. Finally, Harper saw it. The stopwatch lay on the ground behind him, twisted at an odd angle, He hurried over and in his haste stepped on it. A sickening crunch filled the eternal stillness. Harper froze, lifting his foot slowly. The stopwatch was crushed, its delicate gears and springwork hopelessly mangled, the crystal face shattered. A horrible realization dawned. They had broken the only device that could restore time's forward motion. Hank's breath caught in his throat. He looked at Benny Davis, one leg lifted to cross the line. The boy was trapped in mid-stride for eternity. Stretch and Allie hovered behind him, never to finish their race. The crowd in the stands were statues, forever caught mid-cheer or mid-sneer. Harper felt tears sting his eyes, grief and guilt blending into raw panic. He tried picking up the fragments, his shaking fingers fumbling with bent gears and twisted metal. But the magic, or curse, holding them outside the normal flow of time, had no mercy. Without the intact stopwatch to release them, they were stuck in a timeless prison. Hank shouted, "No!" The sound ricocheted in the silence, heard only by Harper. No referee would call the end of the race. No champion would emerge. No bell would ring to dismiss classes ever again. The world was a painting, and they were two living intruders in it. Harper pounded the grass with his fist, sobbing openly, cursing his greed and folly. They had tried to cheat fate, to twist time for their own gain, and time had exacted its revenge by leaving them stranded forever in this frozen moment. As they knelt there, beneath a sky that would never darken, surrounded by runners who would never take another step, Harper finally understood the weight of what he had done. The silence was absolute, the punishment perfect. No glory, no redemption, only stillness and regret. In the center of the track, Benny Davis hovered like a promised champion who would never break the tape. Nearby, Hank sank down onto his knees, hands clutching at his hair, tears cutting silent tracks down his cheeks. Together, the two coaches remained, trapped outside of time, with nothing but the broken pieces of a once powerful stopwatch and their own remorseful hearts for company.